in the spirit, Mosse, of being positive and doing things that are positive, the return of the denim jersey. If you buy the denim jersey right now, it does not have names and numbers. But this one, I got my hands on some that not only have names and numbers, but they have yours truly's name and number. 22 on the front, 22 on the back, Lalas on the back. I'm going to give this away to one of the lucky YouTube subscribers to the State of the Union. If you're already subscribed, you are definitely eligible for this. But the only way that you can win this is to subscribe on YouTube. I can guarantee you, if you're not subscribing on YouTube, you can't win this. Hello, sunshine. I'm Alexi Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union Show, presented by Zillow. Someday starts today. This is where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This show, we'll be talking, Agyemang out, Pulisic breakup, denim giveaway, big Bayern, Arsenal at the death, trash talk, Italian tears, Waldo Pepper, LAFC sitting pretty, Barca imploding, and so much more. But first, joining us also my friend, my colleague, my guiding lights, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how you doing on this? Oh, what are we looking at here? Wednesday, April 8th in the year 2026. And by your wardrobe selection today, I can tell you're doing pretty good.
Yes, I always answer that question by saying I'm doing well, but it's particularly true this week because of what happened Monday night in Indianapolis. And, listeners of this pod might remember that in January of 2024, I traveled to Houston for the national championship football game. I taped the pod with you via Zoom from my hotel room hours before the game, and then I went to see us beat Washington. That almost happened this time again, my friend. After we beat Arizona on Saturday night in the semis, I was strongly considering going to Indianapolis. I looked up flights, hotel, tickets. It would have meant missing Monday's pod. Stu Holden was informed. He was in the bullpen warming up, ready to go. But the buddy I was going to go with backed out. I asked a few other friends. They couldn't go. So it would have meant going by myself. I considered it, but ultimately decided against it. So I did watch from home. But yes, Michigan did win the basketball national championship.
As was expected. All right. But still, congratulations to you and your Wolverines. Heady days right now when it comes to sports over there in Ann Arbor with obviously the football over the last couple of years and now your basketball. What about other sports? You got anything else going on over there?
You're a big hockey fan. Yeah, the Hockey Frozen Four is going on in Las Vegas, which is a city everybody connects to college hockey, So yeah, the semis there are Thursday night. Michigan is involved, and then the final would be Saturday. So
when you were deciding where to go to college, was it Michigan or bust? Was that your number one? I can't remember if I've taught you about this, but I'm curious.
Yes. My high school in New York, Michigan was a very popular destination. A lot of kids from my high school went to Michigan, including friends of mine who were a year older than me. So they were really pushing hard for me to go to Michigan. So yeah. And, the sports, I'm not going to lie, was a big appeal. Obviously, it's a very good school academically, but I wanted to go somewhere, too, that had very good sports.
Last question. If you hadn't gone to Michigan, where was your second or third? Where do you think you would have ended up?
Possibly Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Although, I was sort of vacillating between like a campus type school or a big city school. So I applied to BU as well. It was the only city school I applied to. Everything else was more campusy. And I visited BU and loved it. And I actually considered, maybe that type of college experience would be better. So that's an interesting sliding doors moment for me had I gone to BU instead. Now, let me just say before we move on, there are only two people that are just as happy as I am about Michigan winning. One of them is Josh, who won the big March Madness bracket here, and he tells me he made quite the comeback. Niles got off to a strong start. Niles was like what Chaz was in the fantasy football league, a guy who started out strong but then faded late, and then Josh swooped in and won it. And the other guy is our producer, Trip Westmoreland. I could not believe the venom he has towards Connecticut. Yesterday on the Zoom call, he started going off like, thank you so much, Michigan. I hate those guys. I can't stand them. He's traumatized. He lived in Connecticut for a while, was surrounded by UConn Huskies fans and hate the way they act. So I've never seen that kind of fire from Tripp. It was something to behold.
Wow. All right. Well, I mean, it's emotion. We're actually going to talk about emotion later on in the show. All right. Speaking of, shall we light this candle, my friend?
Let's do it.
Where shall we start?
We're going to begin with some bad news for the U.S. men's national team. On Monday's pod, we mentioned that Patrick Agyemang had been stretchered off from Derby County's 2-0 win over Stoke City that day in the English Championship. We feared the worst, and it is a serious Achilles tendon injury. He's going to be out several months. He is out of the World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, the worst possible news, but certainly in the moment, you saw it on his face. He put out a statement and kind of echoed what a lot of us saw and thought in that moment about how crushed he was. But, he's still a young player. He's resilient. But to have that snatched out of your hands so close, and I think a lot of people, I think we mentioned this on the previous pod, I think a lot of people, including myself, believed that he was going to find a way onto this roster. We know how much I think he endeared himself to Mauricio Pochettino last summer, and he's only grown since then, including in this past window. So just horrible news. It opens up for others. I haven't seen yet, but I'm assuming he is going to get surgery. This is often what happens in these torn Achilles, and this is a big, major type of injury. You can certainly come back from it, and I hope and think that he will. But this is a big thing. So it sucks for him. He's going to have to watch the World Cup this summer and go through all of this rehab in order in order to get back to playing form and hopefully still have a future when it comes to the national team.
In terms of U.S. World Cup roster implications, you and I both think it's going to be 3 center forwards, Balogun, Pepe, and then it would have been one of Agyemang and Haji Wright, and we both felt it was pretty much a jump ball between those two. So if we're right, that just means Haji Wright slides into that spot. But we talked about this on Monday. Doug McIntyre in his projected roster included 4 center forwards, Balogun, Pepe, Agyemang, and Haji Wright. If Doug is right, that does open up a spot. And then you wonder, would that be sliding the next center forward in, which Doug had Josh Sargent just missing out? Or would then Pochettino add to a different position? Doug in his projection also had somebody like Gio Reyna out. Would that open up a spot for him?
Yeah.
Or a Yunus Moose or a Miles Robinson?
I think we're on the same page, like you said, about having 3. I don't think this necessarily changes the equation. Of course, Haji Wright can play multiple positions, but again, that's not what we've seen with Pochettino. And again, I think there are going to be some relative surprises when it comes to who Pochettino takes. If we're playing with one up top, we don't need 4 of them. So if there are hybrids, that's all fine and well. So again, to your point, maybe it opens up an opportunity for someone that was much more on the outside to come back in. It also highlights the fact of how far Josh Sargent has fallen. I know we talked about him getting off and scoring a goal for Toronto in this past weekend, but man, oh man, this is, I think he will look back many years from now if he's not on the roster and say, I wasted that opportunity. And when I came into the national team, I didn't show, and obviously he had some problems when it came to this whole, transfer.
Can I ask you, the 2 World Cups you were involved in, 94 and 98, once you got down to a couple of months out, whatever matches you were playing for a club or country, was it in the back of your mind that any injury right now probably rules me out?
Yeah, but not, I was still pretty naive. Obviously 94, we were playing with the national team, so that's all we were doing. But you still recognize that the closer you got, the closer you were to fulfilling this dream of being on the team. And it's not that you shied out. There was never that attitude. I can't speak for the other guys. For me, I was constantly in fear of losing my place. That's actually a good thing. That means that it was competitive and you had at least I had no reason to rest on laurels at any time. Obviously, I didn't want to get hurt because at least I wanted to be considered, but I knew that I had to do everything. Well, at least I believed it. Maybe I didn't, but I believed that it could be taken away from me like that. Not just with injury, just somebody else would start. So I was going to hold on to it as tight as I possibly could up until that minute when the lineup is put on the board. And let's be honest, until you're actually walking out on the field, in the back of my mind was, this is going to get taken away from me.
Later on in the pod, we're going to talk about the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Toluca have a player, Marcel Ruiz, who is definitely going to be in the Mexico World Cup squad. And in the first leg in the last round against San Diego, he tore his ACL. All the reports were, that's it. He's out for the World Cup. He has opted not to have surgery yet. It's only a partial tear. He claims to be pain-free. And so there are now rumblings in the Mexican media that he's going to try to make a miraculous comeback and hasn't given up on playing in the World Cup. Sounds crazy to me, but it just speaks to how much players, they know what an incredible experience it is to play at a World Cup, and they don't want to let go of that.
You won't let go, and you will do anything. You will say anything. I played in the 1992 Barcelona Olympics with a broken foot, broken fifth metatarsal. I waited until after the Olympics to actually get the surgery done. And what we ended up doing was I played with a shoe that was a size and a half bigger. I broke my left foot than my right foot. It was a size and a half bigger because they had to fit a cast that they made of my foot into the shoe. All of that is to say, I was bound and determined to step on the field in that Olympics. Now, you don't want to hurt your team, and coaches obviously have to make decisions as to whether this is good, but they run you through your paces, and either you do it or you don't. But it's amazing the pain tolerance that you have when you see that moment of living a dream, like going to the Olympics, like going to a World Cup, in the palm of your hand, and you also see the possibility of that being taken away. You will do, like I said, anything.
Yeah, so bad news for Agyemang. We transition. The UEFA Champions League quarterfinal first legs are in the books. We'll take them in order. On Tuesday, Bayern Munich claimed a 2-1 away win over Real Madrid. Luis Diaz scored late in the first half. Harry Kane scored seconds into the second half, and Mbappe pulled one back. It's not over, but Bayern Munich certainly in very good shape going back to Germany.
And they were wonderful. And they probably should have won by more. This flatters, I think, Real Madrid. I will say this, Mosse, over the years, we've talked about what the Bundesliga is and what the Bundesliga isn't. And, just the crushing dominance of Bayern Munich. And therefore, a lot of our assessment when it comes to Bayern Munich and the players is done through Champions League. And so for them to come out here and do this just shows the quality. And it can't be easy to maintain that level at times when you are playing inferior opposition. Now, I know that certainly you could argue that happens in Spain, but the Barcelona-Real Madrid thing kind of keeps it on an equal type of playing field. And with all due respect to Dortmund and Leverkusen and things that have happened before in the Bundesliga, but it was a really impressive performance, especially considering the things we talk about.
You're so true. You're so right. Their perpetual dominance in the Bundesliga sometimes makes it tough to determine if this is just a typically good Bayern team or an extra good Bayern team. And this might be an extra good Bayern team. I think they're probably the favorites to win the whole thing. And, I've talked up Harry Kane as the best player in the world. Michael Olise is not far behind. Right? He belongs in that conversation as well. That France attack at the World Cup with Olise, Mbappe, then Bailey, that's just stupid.
And not for nothing, but Manuel Neuer, that was an incredible performance. Our friend Peter Schmeichel, I think at one point was talking about, hey, that's one of the greatest performances that he has seen. And this is there a chance, Mosse?
Yeah, so he retired from the national team after this performance. A lot of people in Germany are hoping he rethinks that. He said no after the game. He's sticking to it, but yeah, he clearly still has it.
I don't know how you say no, unless it's just a culture that he doesn't want to be involved with anymore.
One last note on Real Madrid. This is not that big a deal, but it's something I was thinking about. I was texting with Stu Holden about it. I do think they're a little bit jealous of Barcelona and La Masia and Barcelona's ability to pump out these homegrown Spanish players. And so they sometimes try to talk themselves into some of their youngsters being better than they are. They have this kid, Thiago Pitarch, starting in the midfield. He did this against Man City in the last round, did it again, almost conceded a goal by a bad giveaway in his own box. And there's just nothing special there. He runs around, he works hard, and the fans like him, but I don't see it. I don't know. I don't know why he's starting big games like this.
Well, a secret sauce when it comes to whatever you're doing with the youth is, by definition, secret. And everybody you can't fabricate it.
They are 7 points back of Barcelona in La Liga, so they're probably not going to win that. So the Champions League is their last shot at a trophy, and now they face an uphill climb going to Munich next week. So Real Madrid's season might be over in mid-April here, depending on how things go. They have Girona on Friday in La Liga. Bayern Munich, who are 9 points clear in the Bundesliga, they're away to Ian Joyce St. Pauli. But obviously the focus for both those clubs now is on that second leg next week.
It's still Real Madrid, so
that's true. Also on Tuesday, Arsenal claimed a 1-0 away win over Sporting in Portugal. Kai Havertz with a stoppage time winner assisted by Gabriel Martinelli. So Arsenal in very good shape there.
Yeah, there was, you could see a sense of relief from Arsenal. And, like we said, at the death, this is a great result. Sporting, I think, acquitted themselves well, as they say. I think Arsenal is a better team, and obviously coming back and getting that goal was huge. And Kai Havertz, and we talked a little bit last week about what Arsenal is this year, or what it is going to be, and I guess the big question is, again, if Arsenal only ends up winning the EPL, the Premier League title, does that detract from their season? And I guarantee there's Arsenal folks, maybe some within shouting distance here, that are, screaming and yelling at me more so than normal for even bringing that up. And I'm not saying you shouldn't celebrate it, but again, this is Arsenal, and this is one of the elites in the world, and the elites are judged by fighting and winning and being successful on multiple fronts. But on this front here, wonderful result.
And this could be a big weekend for them coming up in the Premier League because they host Bournemouth while Manchester City are away to Chelsea. And City can't fall any further behind. It's already a 9-point gap. City have played one fewer game, but still, if you're Arsenal, you got to be looking at those two fixtures, and this is a chance this weekend to widen that gap even more.
Okay. All right. What else we got here, Mosse?
Then we go to Wednesday's action. Atletico Madrid with a 2-0 away win over Barcelona. Late in the first half, Simeone was through on goal. Kubarsi took him down. Initially, it was a yellow, but then VAR reviewed it. They changed it to a red. And, when you're a defender, an attacker is through on goal, and you take him down outside the box and you get a red card, it's not good. But you think, at least the trade-off is I prevented a goal. Then in the ensuing free kick, Julian Alvarez curls it in. So nightmare scenario for Barcelona. It's like the soccer equivalent of like an and one in basketball. Right. So Barcelona had to play the rest of the game down a man. Atletico capitalized in the second half. Sorloth made it 2-0. So they're now in fantastic shape going home with a 2-goal advantage.
Yeah, everything that could go wrong did go wrong for Barcelona. And, the red card, yes, to your point, it was a red card. And it's actually really smart, and any type of smart, whether it's a forward or a winger, as soon as they get goal side on you and through, the best ones are able to crisscross your path. And at that point, as we saw here, all it takes is a tap, and it's going to be a foul. And so this was done, and. But Mosse, correct me if I'm wrong. This doesn't come necessarily as a major surprise, this result.
No, Atletico knocked Barcelona out of the Copa del Rey as well, and they've knocked them out of the Champions League multiple times over the years. So they're a tough matchup for them in these two-legged scenarios.
And I know there's a red card and everything, but it was much more entertaining and free-flowing and maybe romantic than sometimes we associate it with that team. So sitting pretty right now. They would have to really work to screw this up. Not saying they can't.
Future Orlando City star Antoine Griezmann still playing at a high level. Imagine if he could go out with a Champions League title. And, Johnny Cardoso didn't play today. He's injured, but he's going to come back at some point. So you have an American on a team that has one foot in the Champions League semis. That's interesting.
A lot to be excited about and thankful for.
I did mention Barcelona are 7 points clear of Real Madrid in La Liga. They play their city rivals Espanyol this upcoming weekend. Atletico are away to Sevilla, who are battling Stu Holden's Mallorca in that relegation scrum. But back to Barcelona, I'll never forget an article ESPN wrote years ago of what is it like to be an Espanyol fan in that city. And they said in every classroom growing up, if there's 20 kids, 19 are Barcelona fans, and there's the one who's known as the Espanyol fan. It's so funny being that other team in a city.
Well, but it takes a special type of, in this case, a kid, but just I think a special type of person that kind of wants to, march to a different drummer and wants to be alone in what he or she is doing. So I can appreciate and respect those kind of people.
I've lived in LA for 14 years. I have never met a genuine Clippers fan. You meet an occasional, I can't get Lakers tickets, so I started going to Clippers games, and I kind of liked it and developed some affinity for them, but not like a genuine Clippers fan.
Right. So it's almost performative that they are that. Oh, so yeah, that's not a good thing to be. You have to, I guess, be a glutton for punishment, but enjoy the ridicule that you are going to get, the blowback that you are going to get, and the fact that you aren't a part of, let's say, a Wolverine nation, if you will.
Finally, holders PSG claimed the 2-0 home win over Liverpool today. Doué with a deflected shot in the first half, Kvaratskhelia in the second half. But this scoreline does not do this performance justice. PSG completely dominated. This game should have been 5-0. Yeah. Last season in the round of 16, in the first leg at home, PSG dominated Liverpool, but Alisson stood on his head, and then Harvey Elliott scored late. Liverpool claimed a total smash and grab 1-0, and all's well that ended well for PSG, because then they went to Anfield 1-1-0, advanced on penalties, went on to win the whole thing. But this is not as bad because they do take a multi-goal advantage. But again, they kind of leave Liverpool off the hook and left some work for themselves at Anfield.
Yeah, Dembele had a point-blank shot there, and Doué's goal, it's a wicked deflection. It doesn't look like it in the moment, but when you go back, it's the reason why the goalkeeper looks like he gets chipped from so close in. So there's nothing you can nothing you can do about that. But did you see the pictures of Mo Salah just sitting sullen in the back there watching this happen?
PSG at the weekend were supposed to have a top-of-the-table Ligue 1 clash against Lens, but that game got moved to help them in the Champions League. And everybody in France is furious about that. They don't like the way Ligue 1 are helping PSG so much in the Champions League. Liverpool, meanwhile, they host Jedi Robinson and Fulham.
They're not happy because they're fans of other teams?
Well, and also, if two teams are in a title race and one of them is still in the Champions League and the other is not, hey, that's an advantage. That's how it broke. And so one team has to deal with fixture condition that the other doesn't. That's a factor in the title race. Why are you moving games around to eliminate that? You don't have an issue with it?
Oh, I think there's a collective understanding from Ligue 1 and the powers that be that it's good for the league, the better Ligue 1 teams do in Champions League. And so doing things to enable them to put their best foot forward behooves everyone to do something like that.
If you're a fan of one of these other Ligue 1 teams, I would say contact Alexi on X and you guys can discuss this.
Oh, my goodness. You and everyone else.
Also, this week, the Europa and Conference League quarterfinals are getting in the way. In the Conference League, Crystal Palace will host Fiorentina. Chris Richards involved in that one.
No, this is kind of like the Crown, right?
Yes, the Crown.
Got it. Well, congratulations and good luck to Crystal Palace in the third level of tournament, right?
Yes.
Because then the NIT is the second one.
Correct.
Europa. Got it.
A few other games to look forward to in Europe this weekend. In the Premier League, Brendan Aronson and Leeds will be away to Manchester United. That's actually Monday.
Monday, okay.
Yeah.
We'll check that out.
And then I'll lump these two together in the Bundesliga. Dortmund, who are in second place, will host Malik Tillman and Leverkusen. And then Leipzig, who are in third place, will host Gio Reyna and Borussia Mönchengladbach. Leipzig
hosting Mönchengladbach. All right. Well, we saw Gio get off the bench. We'll see if nobody's expecting him to start, so it's a more get off the bench and ultimately what he does. What was the other one you said? Dortmund and Leverkusen?
Leverkusen. I was thinking about this. Between Pulisic and Gio Reyna, for so many years, Dortmund was one of our go-to clubs in the Yanks Abroad section. It's weird to see them be the other team facing a club with an American.
Right? Well, the pendulum swings. And any other ones we need to be looking forward to?
And then in Serie A, Atalanta, Juventus, Musa against McKennie.
Well, obviously, two very different directions, relative to the
more like Musa will get to watch McKennie play.
Yes, he would. We should probably wish him luck. He might not see him again until the summer when he's watching on television.
One more game, which takes us to our home team update presented by Zillow. Someday starts today. AC Milan will host Udinese this upcoming weekend. And, we live out here in Hollywood.
Yes, we do.
And as I'm sure you know, there's a lot of friction between artists and executives at movie studios, television networks.
Yeah.
The execs, they care about the commercial success. The artist cares about the critical acclaim. And we had a moment like that on our last pod on Monday because we were discussing Christian Pulisic's struggles at AC Milan. You asked me if he should stay or go this summer. And rather than answering that question, I pivoted to what I thought was a more interesting, smarter conversation about the state of Italian football. And
you thought it was smarter?
And
that was your first mistake.
What the vibe must be for foreigners like Pulisic and McKennie in Serie A in the wake of this qualification failure for Italy, which, by the way, we're going to talk about Italy failing to qualify to the World Cup later on in the show. But I felt good about it. As soon as we finished taping, Sean Sullivan gets in my ear and derisively says, "You never answered his Pulisic question," because in Sean's mind, that would have been the much sexier clickbait video to put on the internet. Pulisic, should he stay or go? So to make Sean Sullivan happy, we are finally going to address that. So once upon a time this season, the conversation was Pulisic is doing so well. Can he parlay his form into something even bigger than AC Milan? Now the discourse has turned to, with him struggling, might Milan look to unload him this summer, and might Pulisic be better off needing a change of scenery? So the vibe has really changed.
Well, first off, let me say I appreciate your recognition of the constant struggle and back and forth between commerce and art, and I think we've done a good job of creating a fair balance that gives everybody here what they want. All right, when it comes to Christian Pulisic and the question as to whether he should or will, whether he wants to or not, move on given where he is with AC Milan. First off, it's amazing how much his stock has dropped. And it's amazing, probably even to him, to look back only a few short months ago and what 2025 was as a season or as a half season in comparison to where he is right now. I think to answer your question, if he is going to move, what are the reasons? It's one thing if AC Milan comes and says, listen, we're moving on, we're going in a different direction. It just hasn't gone well here, and we don't think it's going to get any better. All right, fine. You don't stay anywhere that you're not wanted, and I do think there will be plenty of suitors for him, especially maybe if he's coming off of a really good World Cup, which is certainly something that could happen. How has he gotten to this point? I think that's actually a much more interesting type of conversation. We are coming on air here today, and we are not beyond looking at the tabloids and everything that's going on. We come to find out that evidently, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Christian Pulisic and his girlfriend, I guess it would be, have broken up. And the reason why we know this is because she is, what do the kids say, spilling the tea, right now in terms of what's going on. And a lot of other stuff, including, a dating app and this and that.
I was going to say, I mentioned recently that I've hit a dry spell on Bumble. I might need to try this Raya.
Right? I hadn't even heard of it, but it's a really kind of high-level type of app. Well, listen, even if he's on it, first off, I don't give a crap if he's on it, all right? You do you. The kids are going to do what they're going to do in terms of how they meet. I can scream and yell and grumpy old man until the cows come home, but that's fine. So for me, that's neither here nor there. But it does bring up something that is important. Yes, we talk about and concentrate and fixate on the 90 minutes of play, especially when the 90 minutes aren't going well or you're not even getting on the field. In this case, Christian Pulisic for those 90 minutes. But sometimes we disregard or devalue or just completely ignore the other 22 and a half hours. And, these are human beings, I can confirm, and they have all of the problems that everybody else has when it comes to off-field types of situations. Now, many of their problems relative to a lot of the things that people are going through in life, because of their lot in life and what they have, they are able to deal with. And people would trade positions with them like that. But, you break up with a girlfriend, you have a divorce, you have, problems, a sickness in the family, God forbid, a death in the family, all the different things, your kids and school and all of the different things that we deal with, they are dealing with. So is this a situation where the personal side and the off-field situation right now is affecting him, I don't know. Can it affect a player? Absolutely. You're devastated, or your heart is broken, or you're just angry because of something that's going on that has absolutely nothing with actually kicking the ball. It can, and of course, affect your performance. Again, we don't know if that's the case, but I think the fact that we're even talking about these things says a lot about how important Christian Pulisic is, the fame that he has attained because of how good he is as a soccer player. And, if there's a young woman out there that wants to, step up for her country and put his broken heart back together again, and in doing so, give us the Christian Pulisic that we need in order to be successful this summer, well, do it for your country.
You might recall when he left Chelsea, Landon Donovan was banging the drum for him to come back to MLS and play for the Galaxy. And again, I say come back. He actually never played in MLS to begin with. I wonder if he is leaving AC Milan this summer, if Landon will pipe up again with that same suggestion.
No, I do think that Christian Pulisic at some point will show up in Major League Soccer. I don't know when, and I don't know what capacity. But again, I think he will have plenty of other offers to go if AC Milan. AC Milan might just say, this was just one of these moments, and we think, we'll start again in the fall, and we hope that you can, rekindle that Christian Pulisic that we saw in the fall of 2025.
And we should note, Eric Winalda ridiculed that Landon Donovan suggestion for Pulisic to go to the MLS. Those two do not see eye to eye a lot these days, Winalda and Landon Donovan.
Well, there's plenty of people that don't see eye to eye with Mr. Winalda. Anyway, we hope that Christian Pulisic off the field, that everything is going well. I hope, again, that you, if it means that we get a better Christian Pulisic, I hope that he finds love, and let's go find it soon.
We mentioned Pulisic possibly going to play in MLS. Let's transition to Major League Soccer. We have some games to look forward to this upcoming weekend. New England will host DC United. For people that don't know, you spent the first 2 seasons of Major League Soccer with New England, 96-97. DC United won MLS Cup. Both those years, they were the league's first super club. Tripp would like to know, do you have any memories of New England DC United games from those days?
I was actually just thinking today on my drive in about those. I spent the first 2 years of MLS, 96 and 97, in New England. By choice, I wanted to go to New England, and I wanted to go and kind of live in Boston and get that experience, and what the Crafts were doing. Rivalries in that moment were, they just kind of were organic, or they were just historic in terms of the proximity of teams. So obviously at that point we had what were called the Metro Stars down in New York, which were certainly going to be a rival. We would take the bus as opposed to a plane. DC we would fly, but it became very clear early on in MLS's existence that DC was the cream of the crop. I remember plenty of times going down and playing at RFK Stadium and having to chase after Jaime Moreno and Marco Echeverri and Raul Diaz-Arce and these types of players. And then I also remember in our own stadium, the Foxborough Stadium, old Foxborough Stadium, having to watch DC United win the very first MLS Cup. My only part in terms of participating in that MLS Cup was singing the national anthem at a certain point. But I do remember playing for the New England Revolution. And the reason why, it's crazy how our mind works. But I saw somebody had posted that on this day back in 1997, Third Eye Blind, one of our great pop rock types of bands, came out with their first album. And I vividly remember going down Route 1, going to Foxborough Stadium to play for the Revolution. It might even have been against DC, who knows, because we played them a bunch of times back then. There were only 10 or 12 teams back then. And I remember there was I don't know what it would have called, not the Best Buy or whatever, but there was a place that sold back then. It was CDs. I remember pulling in and buying that Third Eye Blind first album. It was a welcome dose of, like I said, power pop in what had been many years or a sea of grunge. So These are the types of things that I remember.
And you were not a big grunge guy, Nirvana, Pearl
I was
Jam?
not a big grunge guy at all. So when any type of pop sensibility, either for existing bands or new bands that came on the scene, I gravitated to that.
Now, those 2 years with the Revolution, 96, 97, you shared Foxborough with the Patriots,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
96, that was Bill Parcells' final season as coach of the Patriots. And then 97, I believe it was Pete Carroll, who then, of course, coached USC, led them to national championships, Tripp's worst nightmare as a UCLA fan. But yeah, so did any stories with those two guys, Parcells, Pete Carroll?
I remember meeting Bill Parcells in the stairwell of Foxborough Stadium. And, he was, not just larger than life, he was larger than life. And so I even, with my rudimentary understanding of American football, I recognized how cool he was. And, I think for a lot of us growing up at that time, or being involved in soccer, we had come through the 94 World Cup where there was this peak above ground and a recognition and respect that the game and those of us in the game had not experienced before. And so to have someone like Bill Parcells in what is this kind of sports family that Crafts had assembled, that's always cool to kind of be acknowledged by people that didn't have to do that, and certainly had a long history of being at the top of quote-unquote American sports.
Also, this upcoming weekend, Inter Miami will host the Red Bulls. Inter Miami's second game at their new stadium. Sean Sullivan, very excited about this. This is obviously Messi playing, Michael Bradley coaching. And 10 years ago in the Centenario, you might recall, Messi scored a wonder free kick for Argentina against the U.S. to surpass Gabriel Batistuta as Argentina's all-time top scorer. Michael Bradley was playing for the U.S. that day. They meet again.
Yep. And, Michael Bradley's career as a coach has been so far successful. But he's going to go through ups and downs just like any coach. The interesting thing about this NYRB, New York Red Bulls team, as we spoke about when it first started at the beginning of this year, is the youth and the lessons that they are going to learn. And this is a cauldron that they are going into. We spoke a couple days ago about new stadium, this new stadium down in Miami, and what that is. Inter Miami is still, I would think, desperate for that first win, and so they should be licking their chops when it comes to this young Red Bull team that's going to come down there. But Michael Bradley and company, given his history and given his understanding and given the reality right now, would love nothing more than to once again spoil that pink party.
Vancouver will host NYCFC. From a U.S. national team perspective, Sebastian Berhalter and Matt Freese.
And Matt Freese, really? Do you think that Sebastian Berhalter will, first off, make the team this summer? And secondly, do you think that he will see time during this World Cup?
Yes and yes.
Yes and yes. It's an adamant yes and yes.
I mentioned earlier, there's a real possibility that Johnny Cardoso could be playing in Champions League semifinal matches and then maybe even a final if Atletico get that far. And it's going to blow the minds of a certain kind of U.S. fan that a player that's playing in those games might get benched for like a Christian Roldan or a Sebastian Berhalter. But I do think Mauricio Pochettino likes what those players bring to the table and thinks that with the national team, they've actually been better than Johnny Cardoso.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, in order for that to happen, Sebastian Berhalter has to stay healthy, so knock on wood that he does. He's been flying when it comes to Major League Soccer and Vancouver up there, and we'll see what New York has in store for them with Matt Freese, who I don't think it's changed anybody's mind, is the number one goalkeeper for better or worse.
You might recall Vancouver were runners-up in the CONCACAF Champions Cup last year. They suffered a 5-0 final defeat to Cruz Azul. Cruz Azul looking to repeat this year. The quarterfinals of that competition are off and running, but it was a rough Tuesday night for Cruz Azul here in Los Angeles. They suffer a 3-0 first leg defeat to LAFC. Son, Martinez, and Martinez with the goals. What a result for LAFC. And
yet it shouldn't be surprising. LAFC, for me, is right now the best team in Major League Soccer. And they were, all cylinders last night. We had talked about how there was some, not concern, but I guess some surprise that Son hadn't scored yet. Well, he scored and continued to be involved. Denny Bouanga just tore them a new one from start to finish. And David Martinez, who has been just a wonderful revelation and scored a couple of really, really nice goals with his speed. And if you're watching the show, you can see some of these things. So LAFC, just awesome, awesome. And 3-0. They're going to need as much cushion as they possibly can for when they go down. And this is a great cushion to go down to Mexico.
How about the last couple of days for Tripp? Monday night, Michigan beats UConn, which, as I mentioned, made him very happy. Then Tuesday night, his beloved LAFC smashed Cruz Azul, and today his beloved Arsenal win away in the Champions League quarterfinals.
It's a good start to the week, but we all know, you got to finish strong. So, Thursday, Friday, Saturday are coming.
Also, Tuesday night in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, Nashville and Club America played to a 0-0 draw. I mentioned this in the last round, and I'm going to double down on it. When the away goals rule is in effect, 0-0 is an underrated first leg result for a home team because it means a scoring draw in the second leg you go through. And it worked out for Nashville in the last round against Inter Miami. 0-0 first leg. They went down to Miami, 1-1. They advanced. And Club America is very beatable right now. In the last round against Philadelphia, they won 1-0 away, and then it was only 1-1 back in Mexico. They did scrape through, but that result this time around would send Nashville through.
Yeah, but you're still playing with fire. I understand.
You would have liked taking some kind of advantage to Mexico.
Yeah. I mean, even just for the mentality of it, because you have to, and I'm sure Nashville and everybody else, you have to steel yourself for going down to play in Mexico, regardless of who you're playing. But yeah, I get what you're saying. If they come out, it's not that they were playing possum, but if they come out and get that goal down there, it makes it that much more difficult. And there's fewer and fewer opportunities where away goal rules type of tournaments are in effect. And
then we're taping this on Wednesday afternoon, so by the time you hear this pod, these games have already been played. But tonight, Tigres will host Seattle, and then live on FS1, Toluca will host the LA Galaxy. John and Stu on the call. Their call time is very soon, so Stu Holden could be running around this building as we speak. For all we know.
Wow, we'd sense his presence like Vader, right?
By the way, as you know, there's no end to my talent and my contributions to Fox Sports. Last night, we did a Zoom interview with Gabriel Peck, and I had to serve as the translator.
Really?
John and Stu asked the questions in English. I translated in Portuguese. Gabriel answered in Portugueze. I translated the answers back to English.
Oh, look at you. You're wonderful. You're like a Kate Abdo, It's amazing. All right. Well, we'll see what happens with Seattle and the Galaxy down there if they get some favorable results. Anything else?
That is it.
All right. Quick break. We'll come back. We got some AskAlexi. Okay, welcome back. It's time for AskAlexi, that part of the show where you send in your comments, questions, and concerns. Keep in mind that our handle out there on all the old social media platforms is it's SOTU with Alexi. Our hashtag out there on all the old social media platforms is hashtag AskAlexi. Or you can call into our State of the Union podcast hotline, which is 657-549-2297, 657-549-2297. Mosse, what do the folks want to know today?
First up, Mike on X, in response to one of your "What are we yelling about today?"
Ooh, okay.
He said, "I'm still yelling about the Azzurri not qualifying for the World Cup. A World Cup without Italy just doesn't quite feel like a World Cup." And you had a very snarky response, and I take partial blame because we had taped the pod the day before, and I mentioned that some of the discourse about Italian soccer was reminding me of the reaction when the U.S. failed to qualify to the 2018 World Cup. So I think I put that in your head. So you responded to Mike by saying, Italy's failure is obviously due to pay-to-play competition with other sports, best athletes not playing soccer, pro-rel, parents, coaches, fields, no street soccer, and social media. Que vergogna.
Yeah. I probably should also add everybody getting a trophy. So, I mean, yes, I'm being an ass, which I'm good at. There is, in these times, always going to be this investigation and examination of not just the fact that you failed, but are there bigger systemic problems? Come to find out that even before this, a couple cycles ago, Roberto Baggio, for the Italian Federation had even written up something, 900 pages or something like that, explaining, the course that they should take. By the way, this is nothing new. White papers, TED Talks, secret manifestos or whatever are always going to happen when this type of failure happens. We were joking earlier that I wonder if there's like a page or a paragraph on making penalties, but I digress, my friend. Look, I can't tell you from here what the problem is, but I do think it's interesting because Mosse, in the last couple of years, how much we've talked about Serie A and what it is, and in the context of American players getting opportunities, and not just getting opportunities, but starring. And, at one point, we were talking about, obviously, Weston and Christian Pulisic and Weah when he was there, and Yunus Musa. But, the list goes on and on. Also, are players that are playing at smaller clubs and, Serie B and these types of stuff. And so it's been a very fertile ground for American players. But you had said something, I think, last pod that I may take issue with, in that we know the rise and fall of Serie A, and I was under the impression that it was on the ascendancy and that it was back. Now, we also know that doesn't always equate to a good national team. We talked a little bit about that in the previous pod. But if Serie A is not as good as we've made it out to be, or that people think, does that diminish what our American players are doing in Serie A right now? So I know that's a lot of questions, as opposed to, me just spouting off opinions. But these are the types of things that I am thinking about. I happen to believe that Serie A is better than it was 5-10 years ago. But obviously, from a national team perspective, something is wrong. Nothing is wrong in terms of the things that I was being an ass about here. I was just pointing out that when we fail as a country, these are the types of things that are looked at. Italy can't look at these things. They have to look at something else. So there has to be something else other than bad luck. You miss a World Cup, it can happen to anyone, except Brazil, but it can happen to anyone. And yeah, you'll go back and you'll examine. And you might just say, you know what, it was one of those. It wasn't a golden generation. It was a tin generation, and it just didn't work out. Or we got a problem. There is certainly people that say, well, it's because they play in UEFA, and if they played in CONCACAF, they would have no problem. It would be a smoke and a cafecito, and you'd be fine, or an espresso. I don't necessarily believe that, but it's an argument to be made. All of that is to say is I hear your pain. And you are not alone when it comes to Italian fans, whether they're in Italy or whether they're here, and we're hoping to see their team here. And yeah, we are missing out that Italy is not here. But Italy has no one to blame but themselves. On the field, in terms of the performance that they have, and off the field, in terms of whatever it is that is ailing Italy.
Yeah, no Italian club has won the Champions League since Jose Mourinho's Inter in 2010. And incidentally, Mourinho that season, Inter won the treble. He's the last foreign coach to win Serie A, but Christian Kivu with Inter is probably going to snap that drought this season. But so in a big picture sense, in your day in Serie A, they were winning the European Cup every other year. So they have definitely fallen below the Premier League and La Liga in the pecking order.
That was a different time.
But I agree with you. They sunk to lower levels than they are now. There's been a little bit of a rebirth. Inter have gotten to the final 2 of the past 3 seasons. Now, there are no Italian clubs in the Champions League quarterfinals this season, so that's led to some hand-wringing. But generally speaking,
the rise of Napoli and Como.
Generally speaking, I think the last few years have been pretty good ones for Serie A. I would agree with you on that.
Okay, anything else here?
By the way, I neglected to mention this. Sean Sullivan's Bologna are still in the Europa League. They face Aston Villa tomorrow.
There you go. All right, NIT coming at you. Okay.
Yeah. And then next up, we have a voicemail. Let's take a listen.
Hi, Alexi. It's Caesar from Indiana. I'm curious to know, when you were playing, how much of a trash talker were you? Do you have any memorable moments of trash talk, either that you delivered or that was directed at you? I love the show, and I listen to it every week. And, yeah, let us know.
Okay, thank you, Caesar from Indiana. I was not a trash talker in the traditional sense. What I did try to do, mostly when there was an ability to communicate. So, like in the international game, it's obviously made that much more difficult because of the language barrier. You can get your point across, but again, the type of trash talking that I was doing required a fundamental understanding and a deeper understanding of the language. And so it was oftentimes lost on anybody. You also have to keep in mind that, you're sometimes playing in front of, 50 to 100,000 people, and it's just very loud. People are moving consistently. And so getting moments where you can, relate and translate whatever it is you want to say are few and far between. I would oftentimes, especially when it came to MLS, I would say something obscure or different because I wanted it to be memorable. It never had to do with soccer. So it was, kind of, in Bull Durham when they come to the mound or whatever, and they're talking about non sequiturs, like things that have absolutely nothing to do with what's going on. There was a lot of that, as I'm marking whoever it was, and there's a stoppage in play. Hey, did you watch the American Music Awards last night, or so, something like that, or can you believe what the president is doing, or something like that, just to kind of get them out and off of whatever game it is. I needed all the help that I can get. On the other side, it's not necessarily trash talking, but I vividly remember a lot of the times what would come from the stands was relative to my red hair. I mean, I remember one of the first games I ever played was up in, you were speaking of Connecticut, up in Yukon at Stores, and they started, one side of the field would scream Rocky, and the other side of the field would scream Dennis. And for those that don't know, Rocky Dennis is a character in a movie, real life character, but a character in a movie that starred Cher. And he was a kid who was born incredibly deformed, but he had red hair. And so they would do that. Or there would be, the bozo chants, or these types of things. Or in that game, by the way, I got hit in the face and I started bleeding all over the place. And so there was, you're a bleeder and these types of things. But I always liked the chants or the trash talking that had some depth, some wit, some humor. And again, that we're able to get you off the game. You don't have to, just call somebody a name. Like that does nothing. But if you can say something that gets them thinking about something else, anything else than what they're supposed to be doing, I consider that a win.
A young David Mosse attended a U.S.-Colombia friendly at Rutgers Stadium. Do you remember that game?
Of course I remember that game.
And
yes.
I sat with the Colombia fans, and they were heckling you the entire game. It's kind of amusing to think about now that I work with you and sit across from you.
When I played at Wembley against England, every single time I touched the ball, I got booed.
That's a famous game right after the 94 World Cup. You had given an interview leading up to it where you trashed English soccer. You said Alan Shearer was overrated, so you kind of made yourself a target.
And then he scored 2 goals on me. It's all right. It was worth it. We had a good time that night after the game, but it was fun. I always looked at it, there was like a punk ethos where I don't care if you're screaming and yelling at me, booing me. I just don't want you to ignore me. Spit at me. That really doesn't matter. I just don't want you to ignore me. All right. Anything else, Mosse?
That is it.
All right. One more quick break, and we'll come back with one for the road. Okay, welcome back by the sight and sound of the van. It's the end of our show, and at the end of each and every show, I give you my one for the road. Mosse, I was thinking today when I saw a comment on there on the old social media out there from somebody who just asked me a simple question, and it was, why are most of the U.S. men's national team fan base so negative all the time? And, I got to thinking about, negativity, not just in sports, but in life. But when it does come to sports, I think we all would recognize, whether we like it or not is another conversation, but at least we all would recognize that I think all fan bases in sports oftentimes are negative, and certainly can be negative or pessimistic, if you will, or cynical. I actually think in sports it's kind of our divine right to be so. I think being critical and complaining about sports. Let's be honest, it's fun, and it's certainly cathartic, especially if you put it up against any other things that you can do out there. And it's because of the consequences of sports, they pale to real life. And so I think sports encourages us to be irrationally emotional and passionate. And I hope that that never goes away. And I don't want to dampen that. And yes, oftentimes it manifests in, being grumpy and arguing and screaming at a screen or screaming at a field in a way that you would never do, like I said, in real life. But sports gives us that license to act and do things that we won't do in real life. Now, there certainly is a time and a place for it, and certainly a threshold that you do not want to cross. But there is also a time and place for positivity, if you will. And I think we are certainly heading towards one of those times and places. Not that you have to be Pollyanna, not that you have to be unrealistic with your expectations. But again, I think sports is maybe the best place. I don't know if it's the only place, but it's the best place for unrealistic expectations. And sports, time and time again, will provide us with examples of where, quote unquote, unrealistic expectations are achieved and surpassed. And that certainly comes with a level of positivity towards what's going on. And again, I don't want to, be or have you be delusional or naive, but it is also fun at times to be positive and to mix the two. And so as we, again, get closer and closer to this summer, having a healthy balance and a healthy dose of both the positive and the negative, which is inevitable, I think is going to be important. But the things that we believed couldn't be done were never done through negative. Were never done through negativity. There was plenty of times possibly negativity on the outside, but specifically for the players. You can doubt yourself. You can have good and bad times. Those are inevitable. But belief and being positive in that belief that you are going to do things that haven't been done before, that not only makes you successful in sports, but I think ultimately it can make you successful in life. So that's a long way of answering your question, what I think was kind of a rhetorical type of question about American fans. I don't think they're any different than fans anywhere around the world. And we'll see what kind of fans show up this summer. Again, it's not a situation where I or anybody is mandating what you do. And we all have our moments where we kind of have to get it out and scream and yell. But to the extent that we can counter that with some positivity, I think it's going to go a long way on and off the soccer field this summer. And, in the spirit, Mosse, of being positive and doing things that are positive, I got something for us here, all right? For those of you that are watching, you can see this here. I guess it's the new or the return of the denim jersey, which now we've seen over the last few weeks has been everywhere, including in the stands and on the streets and everything. I have myself a denim jersey, but this is special because if you buy the denim jersey right now, it does not have names and numbers. But this one, I got my hands on some that not only have names and numbers, but they have yours truly's name and number. 22 on the front, 22 on the back, Lalas on the back. Again, long live denim. And so I want to give this away. Mosse, I'm sure you're aware that this YouTube phenomenon, all right, this YouTube's going great guns. People love the YouTube, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this away to one of the lucky YouTube subscribers to the State of the Union. Now, everybody is eligible for this that's subscribed. So if you're already subscribed, you are definitely eligible for this. But the only way that you can win this is to subscribe on YouTube. So if you're not subscribed on YouTube, listen, We love the fact that you listen elsewhere, and I love all these different platforms, but this is specific to YouTube right now. I'm going to find somebody, again, could be an old person that's been around and a subscriber for a while on YouTube, could be somebody new. I don't know. But I can guarantee you, if you're not subscribing on YouTube, you can't win this. We'll see. Maybe I'll have a couple more here along the way, but this is definitely for YouTube. So again, make sure that you are subscribing. And if you are subscribing, you have a chance to win this. Mosse, anything before we go, my friend?
A couple things. On the topic of jerseys, my parents are coming to visit me next week. I'm excited about that. I spoke to them today, and they bought me as a gift the new Brazil away jersey, the Jordan one. So I'm very excited. We'll have that next week. I'll wear it on the pod as soon as I have it. Also, I wish I had gotten this text 10 minutes ago when we were talking about Italy, but I'm going to read it anyway because it's funny.
Okay.
My buddy Zach Benabid, who's an Italian who works for First Things First, and I believe John Strong was a guest on that program today. He sent me a clip. We've talked about how silly the discourse in Italy has become, and he sent me a clip of two guys talking about how Italian mothers are to blame because they're not producing the Baggios and Tottis anymore. What's wrong with the mothers in Italy?
Mamones or whatever. This is ridiculous. Oh, my goodness. I don't know. You guys got to figure it out. Have you watched anything, my friend, that you want to mention?
All I'm going to mention is to reiterate that I am going to see Bruce Springsteen at the Forum on Thursday night. He played there on Tuesday. Aaron Schechter went. She was giving me the lowdown before we started taping, but it was a little bit uncomfortable to have that conversation in front of you because you don't like Bruce Springsteen. You were making snarky comments. Yeah. So we decided we're going to reconvene after the pod so she can give me a proper lowdown.
Yes, she did. She gave it a thumbs up, 3.5 hours or something like that. I did not know that we share our favorite Bruce Springsteen song, which is
Girls in Their Summer Clothes.
Yes. And the reason why I like it may be because when I first heard that on the radio, I had no idea it was Bruce. That's how different it sounded. I just said, this is a kick-ass pop song that I really, really like, and it just happened to be Bruce. But yes, he's not my cup of tea for many songs. But I'm hoping that you have a wonderful, wonderful time at the concert. I only have one thing. This is an old Robert Redford film, 1975, called The Great Waldo Pepper. And it stars, as I said, Robert Redford, Margot Kidder, Susan Sarandon, really, really young Susan Sarandon and Margot Kidder for that matter. It's about an ex-pilot who was in World War I and comes back to the U.S. and it gets into the whole barnstorming thing. So, as aviation was coming to be, these barnstorming types of things would happen, and that, pilots would go up, and they kept having to outdo each other and become more daring, and therefore more risky. And so it takes place between the 20s and 30s when this phenomenon was happening across the country. And it's just a really interesting. And when you go back and read about the aviation and the aerial stunts that were done in this, a lot of it you'd never be able to do it today. But kudos to Robert Redford and others there. It was actually a really interesting and an entertaining type of Robert Redford movie, but not certainly one that people talk about a whole lot when it comes to that. Okay, keep downloading, keep reviewing, keep subscribing, keep rating, keep doing all the different things that you do. Like I said, you better be subscribing when it comes to YouTube if you want to have this. Long live denim. Here we go. We love the fact that you listen and that you watch, whether it's on YouTube or not. We love the fact that you do on all the different platforms out there. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Enjoy all the games that we talked about. Enjoy your soccer on the field. Enjoy your life off the field. We will talk to you again next week. And until then, and as always, my friends, size the day.